Generali, a congressman in the parliament in Vienna, and so on. And this is where also you start the phenomenon that some Jewish family are given some nobiliar title, like barons and so on. French Revolution comes, so the walls of the ghettos are demolished all around Italy, and Jews receive equal rights with the rest of the population. This doesn't last long, because in 1850, there is the previous situation was established again, and the first thing that the church does, reestablish the ghetto once again. Not everywhere, but in central Italy, some parts of northern Italy, and so on, including the Kingdom of Sardinia. While in other parts like Tuscany, then they say, no, we don't want ghettos anymore. This is the end of it, and so on. So in Tuscany, for instance, Jews are given relative equality in terms of rights with the rest of the population, with only the army and the public service still barred to them. And then, after the restoration, you have the fight for Italian unification starts, to get rid of Austria in the north, the state of the church in the center, and so on. And you have what we call the Risorgimento movement, to which Jews participate enthusiastically, because of course all the writers of the Risorgimento, Gioberti, Tommaseo, Cattaneo, Balbo, and so on, they were all insisting for Jewish equality. Jews are citizens like all the others. So all the Jews, they participate enthusiastically to this Risorgimento movement. And in 1848, the walls or the ghettos are, there is the Republic of Rome. They open the ghetto. The Kingdom of Savoy also, they open the ghetto in 1848, and Jews are given equal rights. This doesn't last long. 1849, the Pope, who had in 1848 cunningly, opened the ghetto and given equal right to the Jews, the danger is past. He reestablished the ghetto once again in 1849. The Ghetto of Rome is the last ghetto in Europe. It was opened finally in 1870. The ghetto of Ancona, Ferrara, and Bologna are abolished between 1859 and 1861, because this region became part of Italy. And Lazio, this is the last region, becomes part of it in 1870, so the walls of the ghetto are finally demolished in 1870 in Rome. What happens? Jews are now citizens like everyone else, so they embrace the new economic and political opportunities with passion. Jews were only the 0.1% of Italian population, but they are overwhelmingly being represented in university, in politics, in liberal profession, in public administration, and so on. Many Jews become ministers of the Kingdom of Italy, and they had the highest position in the army, in the administration, and so on. We had a Jewish prime minister in 1910. This would have been unthinkable in France, for instance, at the same time. Luigi Luzzatto, prime minister of Italy in 1910. After he was finance minister, okay, this is more common, for 20 years. And we had a series of ministers of war, which are Jews, which, if you think about it, I mean, this is somehow an exception around Europe. And there is a lot of internal immigration. So Jews leave the small centers in Italy, and they go for countries like Rome, Milan, Genoa, where they have biggest economic opportunities. So in 1840, we had only 70 Jewish communities, and while in 1938, 1 century later, the 70 Jewish communities, most of them had disappeared. There are only 23 left. Now, after these historical explanations, background, let's focus a moment, if you allow me to do so, on the surnames of the Italian Jews. So when it comes to the name, I will start actually distributing this. If you can distribute a few copies around. Right.
Would you like me to help you?
Yeah, well, I don't know, 5 here and distribute a few here and some there. One each. Well, I have 35, so I'm not sure if. Anyway, I'll try to.
Thank you.
Try to share. But they don't need it. They're part of my family. Who need them more? Yeah. So if you look at the first slide, by the way, on the first page there is my email address. Someone wants to contact me, you have some questions, even after, you're free to contact me on any issue concerning Italian Jews, surnames, genealogy, and so on. So here, the first page is what I told you about the number of Jews. The second is, you could see that Italy was in fact divided among many different countries in 1387, where Jews were living. This is slide number 3 at the time of the trip of Benjamin de Tudela. And you can see, in fact, it's very interesting to see slides 5 and 6, because slide 5, you can see, with this number 5, you can see all the Jewish community all around Italy just before 1492. And you can see that the most part of Italy, which is slide 6, has become free of Jews just a few years, 50 years later. You have also, slide 7. It's about the Blanis family, all the banks they had in central Italy. Slide 8 is the name of the 24 martyrs, which were burned at stake by the Pope in Ancona in 1555. And I'll stop here. Follow me in a second, and then I will lead you through the other slides. So when it comes to the names and surnames of the Jews in Italy, we have a particular phenomenon which exists only in Italy, around Europe. You have double names. What does it mean, double names? You have the fact that the Jews of Italy, they have one Hebrew name and one, let's call it Latinized name. The Hebrew name is the one used for all relationship inside the Jewish community, including official documents, so internally. But when they interact with the Christian society, they don't use that name. They use another name. So, and this appears both in official documents, different sources, and so on and so on. So, for instance, imagine that, and this is why sometimes there are genealogical complications, because the same person might have two different names, depending on if it's a Hebrew source, or a internal Jewish community source, or if it's a Christian source. So, for instance, someone who was called Baruch in Hebrew, he was called Baruch, he was known as Baruch, and used the name Baruch when he dealt with the Jewish community. But when he dealt with Italian authorities, he was not using the name Baruch. He was called Benedetto, which means blessed, like Baruch. Yeah. So, Baruch. So, and this creates confusion, because sometimes it's the same person, but it's not realized. Then there is another complication, which shows the fact that several different Italian names could correspond to the same Jewish name, or on the contrary, the same Italian name could correspond to several different Jewish names. So it's very confusing. So, for instance, let me make an example. A Jew called Simone in official Christian documents, is called Simone. Okay. Now, what was his Jewish name? He could be Shimon, but he could also be Shemuel. So, and both are translated in Italian with Simone. So you don't know if it's one or the other in Hebrew. And these are names which are totally different in Hebrew, but it is the same name in Italian, Simone, in all official documents. the name Emanuele, Italian, was used both for Jews called Emmanuel, or Menachem. So again, another complication. Bonaiuto in Italian was used for Asriel and Azariah. So you have the same different Jewish names which are translated with the same Italian name. But so in fact, the Italian Jews of Italy were called the Hebrew name Shema Kadosh, sacred, holy name, and the Italian name Shem Kinui, which means the common name. So how do the name? What was the logic of translating a Hebrew name with a particular Italian name? Well, it could be the result of a simple translation, Baruch with Benedetto. For instance, as I said, it is translated in blessed. Phonetic resemblance. Binyamin, they were called Guglielmo. Okay, I know it doesn't sound, but at the time it must have found. Or Felice, Pinchas. F and P in Hebrew is the same letter. So they had their own rules. Or even sometimes logical connection. For instance, all Italian Jews were called Yehuda. What do you think was the Italian name? All of them. Leone, yes, indeed. The lion of Yehuda, so Leone. Let's call Leone. And I make another example. Okay, this was. I have a grandmother who was an Ashkenazi Jew from Poland. No one is perfect. And and her father died just before my